My husband dumped me on the side of the road in pain to answer his ex's call. Now his own daughter is giving me everything and refuses to speak to him. About 3 days ago, I, 42 years old, had a little accident and ended up hurting my wrist. Thankfully, it wasn't anything too serious, just a sprain, but in the moment, the pain was pretty intense. The only person home with me at the time was my husband, Michael, who's 46. I asked him to drive me to the ER nearby because honestly, I thought I might have broken something. At first, he really didn't want to take me. He kept saying it wasn't a big deal and that I should just ice it, but I didn't want to take that chance. I pushed him a bit and eventually convinced him to drive me. But get this, halfway there, he got a phone call from his ex and, out of nowhere, told me I needed to get out of the car. He said there was some kind of emergency and he had to deal with it immediately. We were literally just minutes away from the hospital, so I begged him to at least drop me off first. But nope, he told me to handle it on my own and drove off. I was in a lot of pain, but I didn't really have a choice, so I walked the rest of the way. What would have been a 2-minute car ride turned into a 15-minute struggle on foot. It was hot outside, I was sweating like crazy, and the pain in my wrist just kept getting worse. Once I got to the ER and checked in, I called my stepdaughter, April. I told her what had happened, and she was at the hospital within 20 minutes. She's 22 and Michael's daughter from a previous relationship with his ex, Eva, who's around 44. But April and I are really close. She's called me mom 4 years now. I've been raising her since she was 7, ever since Michael and Eva split up. Truthfully, their bond was never that strong to begin with. Naturally, April was furious when she heard what her dad did. She couldn't believe he just ditched me like that, especially when I was in pain and needed help. Even after the doctors confirmed it was only a sprain, she said that didn't excuse his behavior. I didn't bother defending him, I was upset too. When we got home, my wrist was wrapped in a splint, and the doctor said I'd need to wear it for at least 3 to 4 weeks. So no, it wasn't nothing like Michael had been insisting. April stuck around after we got back. She helped me with everything around the house, but I could tell something was weighing on her. That evening, when Michael finally walked in, she asked all of us, me, him, and our 15-year-old twin daughters, to sit in the living room. What she said next stirred up a whole lot of tension, but honestly, I was proud of her for standing up like that. She announced that she'd recently been contacted by a lawyer handling her great-uncle's estate. Apparently, he had left her a sizable inheritance. For context, this uncle was from Michael's side of the family, and he and April were always close, they shared a lot of interests. He passed not too long ago, and while we figured he'd leave something to April, none of us expected it to be that much. At first, we were all just happy for her. I was about to congratulate her when she kept going, and that's when things got messy. She said she'd originally thought about splitting the inheritance between me and Michael. But after how Michael acted that day, and honestly, how he's been behaving lately, she had changed her mind. She said she'd rather split it with just me, because she didn't feel like her dad had been treating any of us the way we deserved. And to be fair, she wasn't wrong. A few months ago, Eva moved back into town. At first, she and Michael were just reconnecting as friends. She wanted to spend more time with April, and since Michael was still kind of close to her, she figured he could help make that happen. But April was never all that eager to rebuild anything with her mom. They've never been that close, mostly because Eva was never really present in April's life growing up. Eva and Michael had broken up when Eva had to move away for work. Long distance didn't work out, and after that, her bond with April fell apart. She only visited every other weekend at best, and as her career took off, her visits became even more infrequent. Sometimes she wouldn't see April for months, and even when she did, it was only for a few days. April used to be angry about it, but when I came into the picture and started stepping up, she began to see me as her real mom, and I embraced that. Honestly, I don't think Eva was ever ready for motherhood. She chose the easier path, trying to build a relationship with April only when it suited her. That backfired. Now that she's back and trying again, April isn't having it. She's grown up, she's set in her ways, and I can't really blame her for shutting that door. Since reconnecting hasn't worked the way Eva hoped, she's been leaning on Michael to act as the go-between. At first, it looked like harmless help, but over the past few weeks, it feels like Michael's been devoting more and more of his energy to her instead of his actual family. And we've talked about this. I've told him it's bothering me. I'm not usually the jealous type, but this whole situation is really pushing my limits. They're both in the same line of work, and now they're talking about starting a business together. He keeps telling me it's strictly professional, nothing romantic, but still, he goes over to her place at least twice a week, and that doesn't sit right with me. We've been arguing about it more than I'd like to admit. And after what he pulled when I was on my way to the hospital, I just can't shake the feeling that something's off. So when April announced that she was only going to split the inheritance with me and leave her father out of it completely, the room got real tense. None of us quite knew how to react. But Michael, he didn't waste a second. He jumped up from his seat and came straight at me with accusations, claiming I'd brainwashed his daughter and turned her against both him and Eva. What struck me was that he didn't even look at April, let alone acknowledge that this was her choice. Instead, he went on the offensive with me, accusing me of being overly dramatic and insecure, like I was the problem in all this. He started yelling, saying he only left me on the way to the hospital because Eva had called about some urgent business matter and a potential investor. Apparently, that was more important than getting me to the ER. Then he really crossed a line. He said my injury wasn't that serious and that I was faking it just to get sympathy, especially from April. According to him, I was crying fake tears to make myself look like the victim and paint him as the bad guy. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. But the moment that really lit a fire in me was when he snapped, "You might have taken Eva's place as April's mom, but you'll never replace me." That's when I finally lost it. I fired back and told him exactly what I thought. I said if anyone was acting irrational and selfish here, it was him. And if he thought I was overreacting just because he's spending half his week at his ex's place, then maybe the real issue was with him. I told him, flat out, that any woman in my shoes would have walked out already, and maybe I'd been too forgiving for too long. I told him it was clear now where his priorities lie. It's not with me. Not with our family. Everything's been about Eva lately. At that point, I didn't even care whether they were actually talking about April, business, or something else entirely. The fact that he ditched me while I was injured said enough. I told him I was done. The worst part? I used to believe he'd never risk our 12 years of marriage over a past relationship. But now? I wasn't so sure anymore. Of course, once I suggested that maybe something was going on between him and Eva, he got even more fired up. The argument spiraled from there, yelling, insults, neither of us holding back. It got so intense that April had to step in and separate us before it got even uglier. After that blowout, Michael stormed out of the house. He didn't come back until late that night, and when he did, he didn't say a word to me. He just went into our room, threw a few things into a bag, and told April he'd be staying with a friend for a few days. Then he walked right back out. It's been 3 days since then, and honestly, I've been feeling awful about the whole thing. April has stayed here with me this entire time. She hasn't even gone back to her own apartment. She's been working remotely and helping me with everything, because I can't really do much with my right wrist in a splint. I won't lie, having her here has been a huge relief, but at the same time, I hate that she's sacrificing her space and her freedom just to look after me. It shouldn't be her job, it should be Michael's. But he's nowhere to be found. I keep running the fight over in my head, wondering if I could have handled it better. Maybe if I kept my cool, we wouldn't be in this mess right now. April keeps reminding me that none of this is my fault, and if anything, she thinks I've been way more patient with Michael than most people would have been. But still, I can't help feeling guilty. Maybe I shouldn't have picked a fight just because he's been spending time with Eva. Just to clarify something, because I've gotten comments about it, I'm not trying to shame Eva for choosing her career. I don't think I ever did. All I did was point out the truth. She didn't choose her daughter back then. I stepped in, I put in the work, and that's why April and I are close now. That's not shade, that's just reality. Eva wasn't around when April needed her the most, and now that she's trying to reconnect, April isn't interested. And honestly, I don't think she should be forced to rebuild that bond if she doesn't want to. Even with Michael playing go-between, I doubt it'll change anything. And here's another thing, I'm not oblivious, no matter what anyone thinks. I've considered the possibility that something more could be going on between Michael and Eva. I just haven't wanted to face it because it hurts too much. I didn't really bring it up before because I didn't want to believe it myself. So no, I'm not clueless. I'm just trying to survive emotionally, and pretending everything's fine felt easier than accepting the alternative. I don't have any proof. All I have are suspicions, and Michael's been pretty convincing when he insists that nothing's going on. He always told me their relationship stayed friendly over the years because of April, and I believed that until recently. Now, something just feels different, and it's bothering me a lot. It's embarrassing to admit, but I feel like I'm being pushed aside, like I'm just the wife in the background while he slowly reconnects with someone he used to love. So yeah, I've been trying to ignore the warning signs, but I guess I can't do that anymore. I finally sat down and talked to April about how I was feeling. First thing I did was apologize for everything she's had to deal with. It's been a full week since Michael walked out, and she's been here every single day. With this sprain, especially since it's my dominant hand, I can barely function on my own. She's been an absolute rock. April's been stepping up a lot lately, handling all the housework I physically can't do with my wrist like this, all while juggling her job from home. I'm working from home too now, but at least I've had the luxury of not worrying about chores, thanks to her. I told her how guilty I've been feeling about the whole situation. She shouldn't have to put her life on hold to help me out. Honestly, that should have been Michael's job, not hers. But April just brushed it off and said it wasn't a big deal. She reminded me that when she was growing up, I wasn't obligated to take care of her either. We're not biologically related, yet I went out of my way for her. So, according to her, this was just her way of showing up for me the same way I had for her. That really hit me hard. I got emotional and started crying. Everything I'd been holding in just poured out. In that moment, I admitted something I hadn't said out loud to anyone yet. I was starting to suspect Michael was being unfaithful with Eva. With how often they'd been together lately, something just felt wrong. I expected April to instantly tell me I was reading too much into it, to reassure me that her dad would never cheat. But instead, she said nothing. And that silence said everything. It was like she didn't want to lie to me, and she didn't want to confirm my worst fear either. Eventually, she did speak up. She told me she didn't know for sure if her dad was cheating, but she was certain about one thing: they definitely weren't meeting up to talk about rebuilding her relationship with Eva, like Michael had claimed. According to April, she'd barely heard from her mom in the past couple of months. No texts, no calls, nothing. She said she'd been meaning to tell me for a while but didn't want to stir up drama, especially since it's such a messy situation to begin with. She just hadn't found the right moment. Hearing that left me speechless. If Eva hadn't even made an effort to contact her own daughter, then Michael's whole story about trying to help the two of them reconnect was complete nonsense. That's when it really sank in for me. I couldn't keep doing this. I told April that I was seriously considering filing for divorce. I just couldn't take the uncertainty anymore. Michael clearly didn't care how his actions made me feel, and his relationship with Eva had crossed a line I wasn't okay with. Whether it was business, parenting, or something more, I couldn't trust a word of it anymore. For all I know, this so-called business venture was just a cover-up. At this point in my life, I'm too old and too tired to be dragged through emotional chaos like this. I've already stuck by Michael through so much quietly, without complaint, because I truly loved him. But even love has its breaking point. And I think I've reached mine. There's no one I could have said all of this to besides April. My dad passed away a couple of years ago. We were very close, and my mom hasn't been in my life since I was a kid. So in many ways, April is all I have. And despite everything, she understood. Even though we're not blood, she's been more than just a stepdaughter to me. She's family in every way that matters. My twins are still too young to fully grasp what's going on, but April gets it. She told me that if divorce is what I truly want, I shouldn't hesitate or feel bad about it. Nobody else seems to be looking out for my emotional well-being, so it's time I start doing that for myself. And she's right, there's no way to know what's really going on between Michael and Eva. Even if I confronted him, chances are he wouldn't tell me the full truth. Everything has spiraled out of control. April told me I need to get out of this mess before it does more damage, and she's not wrong. For someone so much younger than me, she had the clarity and wisdom I really needed to hear. So, I've already started researching divorce attorneys. I haven't filed anything yet, but it's looking more and more likely that I will soon. And if Michael does come back home in the meantime, we're going to have a serious conversation, one I've been avoiding for far too long. So when Michael comes back, if he ever does, I plan to tell him exactly where I stand. But truthfully, I've already made up my mind. I know this road won't be easy, but after everything that's happened since Eva returned, this honestly feels like the easiest part of it all. Update 2, it's been a tough week. Michael walked out 2 weeks ago, and he still hasn't come back. With April's help, I got in touch with a lawyer, and just a few days ago, I officially filed for divorce. Michael and I aren't blocked on anything, we just stopped talking. I sent him a message explaining everything. I told him I didn't see any reason for us to stay married anymore, not with how obvious it was that his priorities had shifted. Ever since Eva came back, it's like I don't even exist to him. It crushed me emotionally, but I had to put my foot down. In that message, I poured my heart out, everything I'd been holding in. And just like that, he didn't reply. Not a word. So I took that as my answer and moved on. Today, I'm pretty sure the divorce papers got to him, because he finally reached out, but not to me. He messaged April instead. He told her he'd be signing them soon, just needed his lawyer to review everything. Apparently, he'd already looked through it and had no problem with any of the terms. And that right there? That silence toward me and using April as a middleman, it just confirmed what I already knew. He doesn't care. Not really. And if he ever did, he sure doesn't now. In a weird way, it made things easier. His casual attitude about ending our marriage only made me more confident that something was going on between him and Eva all along. You know, we've had some nasty fights over the years, but divorce? That was never on the table. Not until now. I honestly never imagined we'd get to this point. But here we are. On the bright side, my daughters have been amazing. Even the twins, young as they are, seem to understand what's happening and have been so kind and supportive. April, as always, handled everything like a pro. She even helped me explain the divorce to the twins after I filed. I was bracing for tears, maybe some anger, but they were calm, understanding, and even a little relieved. As long as they're on my side, I know I'll be okay. And since the twins are already 15, almost 16, we don't even have to get into a messy custody battle. We'll just talk it through with them and let the lawyers put together whatever paperwork's needed. For now, they're adamant about staying with me. They don't want anything to do with their dad, and I don't blame them. Update 3. It's been 5 days since I last wrote, and today, Michael came back, paperwork in hand. He didn't contest anything. The divorce will be finalized soon since all the legal details have already been worked out between our lawyers. He didn't even call to say he was coming, so when he showed up at the door, I was caught off guard. Still, I let him in. He said he was only there to grab some clothes because he was running out and couldn't keep borrowing. It was the weekend, so April and the twins were home. But none of them wanted anything to do with him. They avoided him completely, barely even looked his way. Michael didn't say a word to any of us the entire time he packed. But just as he was heading out, he turned and said something to the girls. He told them he understood they were upset about what was happening between the two of us, but they needed to realize that both he and I were going through a lot in our personal lives, stuff they wouldn't be able to understand yet. He added that even if they hated him now, he was still their father and one day they'd understand his side. None of us responded. Not one word. Because frankly, he was full of it. He tried to make it sound like we were both equally responsible for everything falling apart, but that just wasn't true. After he left, April couldn't hold it in anymore. She went on a full-blown rant about how ridiculous it was that he still couldn't admit what he'd done. She said it plain and simple, he was the only one who had caused this mess. The issues I was facing? All created by him. I didn't have problems until he started prioritizing Eva over us. And yet here he was, acting like we were both at fault. Even the twins were furious. They couldn't believe he had the nerve to say they'd one day understand his point of view. As far as they're concerned, there's nothing to understand, he was just wrong. Period. What he did broke this family, and the least he could have done was apologize. But no. Not even that. In the end, I was proud of my daughters. They handled it with grace. No drama. No shouting. Just quiet strength. Meanwhile, Michael's stuck in his own delusions, thinking what he did was somehow justified. If that's how he wants to live, so be it. I'm done caring. Update 4. It's been 6 months now since all this started. The divorce was finalized a few months back. April talked me into going to therapy. I didn't expect much from it at first, but to my surprise, it's been helping. I've started to feel like myself again. And yes, Eva and Michael did start that business they'd been talking about. So, turns out they weren't lying about that part. But I'm also pretty sure they're together now. I can't prove it, but it's a gut feeling and one I trust. Not long ago, that thought would have destroyed me. But now, I feel nothing. Just numb. I gave that man 12 years of my life. I loved him. I supported him. And he threw it all away. So really, the loss is his, not mine. All I care about now is that my daughters and I are safe, happy, and healing. That's what matters. And that's enough.